Welcome back. We previously did a part 1 of this video where we talked about all the new projects we're going on with our dry dock extension, for lack of a better word. We've got our fundraising efforts were successful, and we are getting a new contract together, and we're doing work that we didn't get to do under the old contract, so that before we leave the shipyard, everything that can only be done in a dry dock will be done here in Drydock. And then when we go back to Baton Rouge, everything that we do there is stuff that can be done there versus having to have the equipment of a shipyard in a dry dock. So welcome back. We have enough going on. We had to split it into 2 parts. And what we're going to do today is we're going to do a deep dive down into the ship. We're going to go into the engineering spaces, and we are going to show you some of the structural repairs that we are doing to the ship that wasn't covered under the previous contract. So get your hard hats on, get your steel-toed boots on, get all your safety equipment together. We're going to go crawling. Follow me. So if you've been following along with the kids' journey through Drydock via our Facebook post and through Drydock updates on YouTube, you've heard about us talking about a internal structural survey that we did in September of 2024. And in that, I joined with a couple of the guys from the shipyard, and from main deck all the way down to keel, and from the stem at the bow all the way to the stern, we went through every single space, living spaces that are on the tour route and spaces well below the tour route that people just can't get into because of straight ladders and tight fits. And we inspected everything looking for deterioration. And what we found was there was deterioration in the engineering spaces, which we'll visit in a minute, but very little deterioration at all in spaces outside of the engineering sections. Kids' bones were really good. And you can find that if you, Alcy, come on in. This is the 5-inch powder magazine in the forward part of the ship, A408M, for those of you who look at compartment numbers and everything. And if you look at the frames coming down, you'll notice they haven't been scraped and painted in years, but they're in very good condition. The paint has lasted a good long time, but there's no deterioration, there's no rusting, there's no holes through those frames. And structurally, the room is sound. And this is what we found all the way through. The only thing we have is right here behind you, Alcy, is a plate on the outer hull, which you can see is not the same color. One of these things is not like the other. That plate had too many divots in it at the waterline. We are right at the waterline. And so as a result of that, instead of trying to do clad welding repairs or cropping renews, there were enough problems throughout the whole length of the plate that they pulled the entire plate and replaced it. But other than that, everything in this room is exactly what they found. And you can even see a little bit of warping of this frame. And this likely is the result of the impact on the starboard side of the Hyman back in the day in 1953 in Long Beach when she tore into the bow of the ship. So there'd be a little bit of torquing on this side as she pushed the bow away from her as she carved into the ship. So this is just a guesswork on my part. I don't know for a fact, but the fact that it's buckled a little bit, it's still got strength, otherwise the Navy would have replaced it. But that is likely the result of the Heinen's impact. So everything forward of the reefer deck, good shape, no need to do any work on the structure. Everything is going to be back in the engineering spaces, which we'll visit in a minute.
All right, it's probably a little bit loud in here, maybe a little bit of echoing, but we are in the fuel tank, fuel oil and ballast tank. I don't C9, something like that. But anyway, we are down underneath aft berthing in the tail end of the ship. And as you can see, not any rust. It's dirty, it's stained from this old fuel oil from all those years of service, but no rust. And when they got in here and they cleaned the tank, pretty much they're cleaning residual out, just stuff that was stuck. This old fuel oil, this bunker C, it's thick like tar, it's thick like napalm. And so some of that was still attached to the pipes, to the heating coils that are in here, because you actually had to run steam through these coils to heat up the oil before they could start using it, before they could pump it out, because it's so thick, it's so viscous. So this room, even though it was empty, it had no more oil in it, it still had coating on all of this and on all of the tanks in the ship, which means it was protected, so no deterioration. So that was a good thing. And any deterioration where they replaced plating alongside of the tank came from the outside, thinning from the outside at the waterline, which we are right at about the waterline. And I'm looking just forward to my left toward the camera, left to the right of the camera. And there is a partial section of the tank wall here that has been replaced because of a plate thinning at the waterline. But again, that thinned from the outside, not from the inside. So good shape with the tanks, just like with the magazines.
All right, so we are in the aft fireroom, known as B3, B as in Bravo, 3, and I'm about to go under our aft boiler so that you can see some of the work that's going to be done in the engineering spaces, engine rooms and fire rooms. And we'll talk about that when we get under there. Maybe it'll be a little bit quieter, it'll be a little bit more muffled. So here we go. It's a little bit of a squeeze, especially when you're wearing a hard hat. So, as you can see right here, it needs a little bit of paint work. We've already started doing a little bit of paint work, but it needs a little bit more. But overall, not bad. A lot of the original paint is still in place. Hasn't flaked off too badly. But it's once we travel a little bit and we get into new areas where you start seeing toward the center line problems. So as you can see right here, you can see the light coming through this frame, this longitudinal actually, and this is an area that needs to be repaired. Now, I'm a little surprised right here because I see new frames and I see new longitudinals, and what has happened here is we've already gotten some of the repairs that we needed done already in this space, which is fantastic. We are a little bit ahead of schedule. Now, these frames that you see here, these were completely rotted out. The longitudinals had rotted away from the skin of the ship. You had a gap maybe about as big as my thumb, maybe a little bit wider. That goes all the way down a good long length of longitudinal, which meant the skeleton was not connected to the skin of the ship anymore. Here we go. Here's a perfect example. I was going to say all the work's been done, but all the work has not yet been done in this room. So let me get over to where there we go. Pay dirt. That's not something you'll hear me say a whole lot, because I hate seeing the ship in this condition. So if you look right here, you will see, place the light, you will see how the frame has rotted out. I apologize, guys, for the shoddy camera work, but if this GoPro is picking it up correctly, you see where the longitudinal has rotted out underneath it. Now, this did not look as bad when we're in Baton Rouge. You'd see some scale built up and everything, but what you do have is they got in here when the ship got to the shipyard, and as part of the cleanup and preparation for repairs, they sent guys under here, just like I'm under the boiler now, and they pressure washed and cleaned any oily residue. They cleaned out all the scale and rust, and just like blasting the hull, you find stuff that you didn't know about. Now, we knew about some of this stuff, but we didn't know about all of it. So this is unacceptable. This is not something that you can leave as is. And so that's why we've been talking about fundraising of we'll leave the yard in July, or if our fundraising is successful, we'll leave the yard in November. This is not something that would be easily fixed in Baton Rouge. As you can see here, this is one of the touch points where one of the cradle pads impacted. And you can see they have taken and cropped out, and it comes all the way down here and comes all the way over here, and then it goes up beyond this frame up here. My GoPro is probably getting banged up, and I apologize. But you can see where the touch point sits. And the yard has taken and added more structure. This is another frame that they've added. And it comes down here and it connects to these longitudinals. And this is added structure to make sure that those touch points never have a piece that won't support. You can see on this longitudinal how it's compromised. It's not supporting the hull whatsoever. The hull itself is in good shape. This hull is in good shape. It's good thickness. But otherwise they would have replaced it by now. But it's not connected to the pieces that are supporting it here. Over on this side, completely connected. Not in danger of any sort of push through. But here, if she were to hit something hard, that skin would flex, and that compromises the integrity of the hull, because the hull could be damaged because it gets to flex that much. So Thoma-Sea has already started going through, as I was showing you. Let me get the light. And they are replacing the frames, and they are replacing the longitudinals. The longitudinal on the other side of the keel here has been replaced. Brand new metal. They did that while they were working on the hull underneath the keel, all the touch points, and they've already put in new frames. They look fabulous. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. And they're going to get to this one now that we have funding that will allow them to continue this work. And again, this is not a situation where somebody didn't take care of the ship. We'll get you some footage of the engine room and let you see how the engine room was painted by Eagle Scouts. And they got under the condensers, they scraped, they painted, and it looked beautiful. And I can tell you, out of all the 8 leaks that we had coming to the shipyard, developing from 2019 to 2024, only one of those leaks occurred in an area that had been taken care of by the Eagle Scouts. There's just too many spaces like this. I cannot put Eagle Scouts under the boiler for many reasons, but one of them is just being able to egress in the event of an emergency. This, you saw me getting in. It's impossible to get out of here fast. There are 3 people waiting outside to raise the alarm right now, Molly and Brandon and Alcy. If I get stuck or if I get hurt and they need help, they're gonna run for help. So, shifting back to maintenance and upkeep, why would these have rotted out like they did? Well, they're under the boiler, which means this metal is subjected to extreme heat, even bleed out heat from outside the boiler. High temperatures can damage steel over time, and she served from 1943 to 46, and then again 51 to 64. So that's a lot of heat all the time, and they rarely shut these boilers down because they need steam to run the generators that provide electricity for the rest of the ship. So you need that steam going. Boiler water, feed water that comes out of the boiler, if it spills into the bilges like this, the water is chemically changed from that boiling process, and it's a recycled process. You heat the water up to steam, the steam goes to the engines, it comes back to the condenser, it drops from steam back down to a liquid and comes into the boiler. And they try to keep the boiler water as pure as possible, but there are compounds that get into the water that when it gets into a space like this in the bilges, then before it gets pumped out, it can actually do some damage to the steel, accelerating any sort of corrosion that might be here or start corrosion. So water in the bilge happens fairly frequently in an engineering space. They pump it out. That's why you have pumps scattered all through these areas. And that's one possible solution. You have an instance where, and this kind of really surprised me, Mr. Tuss, if you saw our graffiti video where I'm under the condenser and by the reduction gears in the aft engine room, and I find Tuss spray painted up there, or brushed up there rather. Mr. Tuss was on in the 60s, and what he ended up telling me during his oral history was the way they painted the bilges was they would flood the bilge, they'd pour paint in, which would float on top of the water, and then they'd slowly, steadily pump the water out. And as the water drops, you have paint settle onto the steel, and then you have a nice, beautiful painted bilge. No brushwork, no crawling into those tight spaces or anything. It's nicely painted. But here's the problem. You've got salt water that you pumped in from outside. It's not feed water, because you don't want to give up your feed water that easily. You've pumped in salt water from outside, and then it's now on your steel, and then you pump it out, and the paint captures any saltwater residue between it and the metal as it settles, and you've got salt under the paint corroding beneath the paint. One more way that might explain this, and I'm not saying this is definitive as to why the bilges, the longitudinals, the frames in some of the bilges are rotting out like this. These are possibilities. The last possibility is, I have been told through oral histories, I have no documentation on this at all, but at Okinawa, some of the destroyer captains, engineering officers, were taking, because they were taking hits from kamikazes, and the kamikazes were trained to hit the bridge or to hit the middle of the ship where the engineering spaces were to cripple the ships. They would keep 2 or 3 feet of water in the bilge at all times, in the engine rooms and in the fire rooms, so that if they took a hit and a line ruptured from a boiler or from the lines in the engine room coming from the boilers, then the crew could dive into the bilge if they had enough time and get beneath the water and escape being scalded to death by that high pressure 800 degree or 650 degree 800 psi, or vice versa. I always get confused on that. 800 degree 650 psi temperature steam, and that's Fahrenheit, not Celsius. so they would have a chance. And more than a few sailors talked about diving into the bilge to escape that steam, because of course the steam is going to rise, and the water has a chance to actually protect them a little bit. Cold seawater pumped in from the outside and maintained. So having seawater sitting in there for a long duration, that's also a possibility. Any number of things could contribute to this. Of course, you can see we have not been able to get in and paint everything under the boilers, but the paint is in good shape. And so this is probably a combination of many factors. But we found the problem. We're not passing the buck to the next generation. We're doing everything we can to make sure that this ship is structurally sound and that we hand her off to the next generation of shipkeepers as good as she can possibly be. So when Kidd leaves the shipyard, she will be sound. Her bones will be sound, her skin will be sound. This is like osteoporosis for a ship. The bones have gotten thin in this area. Like I said, the front half of the ship, the back half of the ship, the oil tanks had a nice oil coating on them still. So they did not have anywhere near this sort of deterioration that you do beneath the boilers, in the engine rooms, in the fire rooms. So that is your trip beneath the boilers. That is why we're staying in the shipyard just a little bit longer. We've got a good skin now. We want to have a good skeleton.
All right, so as you can see, we're underneath number 2 boiler. I'm over on the port side. And this is some of what we were talking about. This is the deterioration of a frame. And you can see that frame's not really putting any support on that skin there underneath it. What it's doing is supporting longitudinally against the keel and against the other longitudinals, but that skin can flex under there, and that's bad. We also have part of a longitudinal rotted out here. This is a frame, this is a transverse. This is a longitudinal running lengthwise with the ship. You can see it's begun to rot out there as well. And a little bit more down here. This is the first longitudinal 2 feet off of the keel on the port side. And I think I said port side earlier. The one I just showed you was starboard side. But you can see Thoma-Sea has already come in and they have replaced with new metal that frame, which was rotted out, this longitudinal, all the way up to the boiler facing, and this frame here. And now here's a good idea for what the original looked like. This is a longitudinal. This would be 4 feet out. And you can see there, that longitudinal is not doing anything. It's rotted out all along the bottom, all the way up to the boiler frame. From one end of the boiler frame, all the way to the other end of the boiler frame. Not good. That skin is flexing. And this is one of the areas of our leaks, right where on the 2 foot longitudinal, this was where one of the big leaks was. Our first very big leak. And now it's repaired, and that skin is now solid underneath, connected. So, this is what we've been talking about. This is why we got the contract extension and the extra money. And this is going to make the ship 100% solid, better than she's been probably since she was first built in 1943. So all of our thanks to all of our supporters who helped us get that funding and decided to make KIDD better than just the bare minimum, because this would ultimately undo all the hard work we've done on the hull itself. Now, let's see if I can get out of here without banging my head. I'm tired. I want to go home. So, I hope you've enjoyed this explanation of what we're doing in the shipyard for these next extra few months. This is what the extra amount of fundraising that we've been doing, that we've been talking about, was all about. We want to make sure that the skeleton of the ship is in as good a shape as the skin of the ship. So we have fixed the thin skin, and now we're taking care of the osteoporosis that has gone on underneath the boilers in all 4 engineering spaces, under the reduction gears, that sort of thing. I hope it makes sense, and I hope you find that it's a good investment. And if you have questions, hit us in the comment section. And just remember, just because we've got this extra fundraising to be able to do this work doesn't mean that we still don't need to raise funds. We still need to be able to keep the lights on at home, so that when the ship finally gets out of dry dock, she's not coming back home immediately because the river's not up. So we need to make sure the lights are still on at home. There's a staff that's still there to take care of her and put her back together in Baton Rouge, put all the artifacts back on and get her ready for touring. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't. Share it around noise, and hit that like button.
Check out the Patreon.
Check out the Patreon that we've got going. Join up to that. We have a great book club Elijah Otto is running, and some more behind the scenes stuff. And we're on all the platforms. Go to USSKIDD.com, hit donate. We're almost to the finish line, folks. She's almost in better shape than she was when she got to Baton Rouge in '82. I would say right now she probably is in better shape, but we're going to take her across that finish line. We're going to have her better than the way we got her. And that's the whole motto of the Boy Scouts. Leave it better than you found it. That's what we're trying to do. The next generation is coming up behind us. I just hit 30 years. I hopefully will make it to 40, but somebody's got to take over, and I want to leave this ship to them better than I found it. Help us do that. Help us keep KIDD alive for another 40 to 60 years. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time. Thanks.
Osteoporosis.
Huh?
It's osteoporosis.
Oh, we gotta refilm the whole thing.
What have I been saying?
It's osteoporosis.
Okay.
If that's not a big deal to you,
It's not a big deal to me.
All right.
I'm a historian, damn it, not a doctor.